You hear climate change, and you probably think about the threats to things we love, right? Like coffee, wine, or chocolate. But what if the story wasn't that simple? Today, we're looking at the island nation of Vanuatu, where the future of cocoa farming and our chocolate is taking a turn that, well, you'd probably never expect.
First things first, you have to understand what's at stake here. For Vanuatu, cocoa isn't just some luxury item. It is a lifeline. We're talking about more than 30% of the entire population, thousands and thousands of small farmers who depend on this crop to make a living.
And this entire industry, the livelihood for all these people, it all hangs on a really delicate balance. See, cocoa is a notoriously picky plant. It needs things to be just right. And as we all know, our climate is changing fast. So, to really get what's happening, we need to know what that perfect climate for cocoa actually looks like. Farmers have literally built their lives around these very specific, very demanding rules. Think of this as the official rule book for growing cocoa, and it is incredibly strict. First, the temperature has to stay in this perfect little window, between 22 and 31 degrees Celsius. Not too hot, not too cold. Then there's the rain. It needs a lot of it. But the real kicker is that it needs that rain consistently, every single month. No long dry spells allowed. Because of these strict rules, it makes total sense that cocoa farming has pretty much always been clustered in the northern parts of Vanuatu. It's warmer there, it's wetter. The cooler islands in the south, they just never really fit the bill. Well, until now. Okay, so what happens when you take this rule book and you apply it to what the climate is going to look like in the future? This is where the story takes a really unexpected twist. The scientific models are pretty much in agreement. By the year 2050, Vanuatu is going to be a lot hotter. Depending on how much we emit globally, we're looking at an average temperature jump of anywhere from 0.7 to 1.3 degrees Celsius.
And your first thought is probably the same as mine was. Warmer temps for a picky plant? That sounds like terrible news, right? Surely that means a lot of the land where cocoa grows now will become unsuitable. That's kind of the standard story we hear about climate change in farming.
But that is not what the science is saying here. Nope. In fact, for Vanuatu, the models predict the exact opposite.
Get ready for this. Under the high-emission scenario, the one where it gets warmest, the total amount of land in Vanuatu that's suitable for growing cocoa is projected to increase by a staggering 103%. It could literally double.
So how on earth is that possible? How can a warming planet create more space for such a sensitive crop? Well, the answer isn't that the land just magically gets better. It's that the map of where the good land is about to be completely redrawn.
Okay, so here's the secret to this whole puzzle. The map is shifting south. While it's true, some of those traditional northern farming areas will get too hot, they'll push past that 31-degree ceiling. At the same time, huge new areas in the cooler south and up in the mountains will start to warm up, entering that perfect cocoa-growing sweet spot for the very first time.
And just look at the scale of this potential change. Even in the best-case low-warming scenario, we're still looking at a 22% jump in suitable land. But in that worst-case scenario, the expansion is just massive. We're talking about a fundamental redrawing of the country's entire agricultural landscape.
But, and this is a really, really important but, before we get too carried away, it's crucial to remember that this model is only looking at two things: average temperature and average rainfall. The full picture for the farmers on the ground, well, it's a lot more complicated.
You could say it's a classic case of reading the fine print. That big headline number seems incredibly optimistic, but when you dig into the details, you find some really serious challenges hiding there. And that fine print is no joke. We're talking about things like tropical cyclones becoming less frequent, but the ones that do hit will be way more powerful. More intense droughts. Not to mention extreme El Niño and La Niña events, throwing those all-important rainfall patterns into complete chaos. And on top of all that, you've got increased pressure from pests and diseases like cocoa blackpod, which just loves these new, wetter conditions. So what does all this mean for the actual people at the center of this story, the farmers? It means they have a pretty incredible window of opportunity, but only if they start adapting and adapting quickly. So what's the game plan? Well, it really breaks down into 4 key strategies. First, they've got to diversify. You can't put all your eggs in one basket when the weather is this chaotic. Second, they need to innovate. Start using more climate-tolerant varieties of cocoa that can handle the heat. Third, and this is a big one, they have to plan to relocate. Start thinking about shifting their farms to those new, suitable areas in the south. And finally, they have to manage their current farms differently, using simple things like more shade trees to protect the crop.
You know, this story is such a powerful reminder that the impacts of climate change are rarely straightforward. It's not always a simple story of loss. It's going to create surprising challenges, for sure, but also these unexpected opportunities. And it leaves you with a much bigger question. If the agricultural map for just one crop in one small nation can be totally redrawn like this, what other fundamental maps of our world are about to change right before our very eyes?